Welcome to B-Sides Orlando at Full Sail University. Our panel today is BountyCraft. Our moderator is Chloe Messdaghi. Chloe is a security research advocate, PM, at BugCrowd. Since entering cybersecurity space, she sees security as a humanitarian issue. Humanitarian work includes advising as a UN volunteer, serving as a board member for several humanitarian organizations. Chloe also heads WIST, which is now called WOSEC, mentors and advocates for inclusion in tech, and founded a nonprofit called Drop Labels. We have Jason Haddix as a speaker. Jason is the VP of Researcher Growth at BugCrowd. Jason works with BugCrowd to improve the security industry's relations with researchers. His interests and areas of expertise include mobile penetration testing, black box web application auditing, network infrastructure security assessments, wireless network assessment, binary reverse engineering, and static analysis. Our other speaker is Bango. He's a senior security advocate at Microsoft, focused on being a voice for the security community within the company and helping to bridge lines of communication with security practitioners, researchers, and bug hunters. With 30 years of enterprise and open source software development experience, he's developed his focus on improving the state of security across the broad spectrum of systems development by working closely with the security community to address their evolving methods, tooling needs, and unique mindset. Please welcome our panel.
Is this thing on? Yes? There we go.
All right. Welcome, everyone. This is a really sick background. I had like this cool slide, but this is so much better. Thank you for coming. And I'm going to do a quick little intro, but I'm going to actually let these guys speak for themselves. I have Ray here. I have Haddix here. And tell me a little bit about you guys. Like, how did you get into hacking in the first place?
Well, why does he get called Haddix and I don't get called Bango?
Because he's my boss.
Oh, okay. All right. You want to take the first question?
Yeah, so this is the portion where they'll probably cut out the audio later, but I wanted to be honest with kind of the venue here. And then concurrently, I also was taking a whole bunch of Cisco networking classes. I was studying to be an IT admin. And there was one elective called Ethical Hacking and Network Defense. And I didn't know that you could use these skills to be a professional and be ethical. And so although the class wasn't really great, it was very outdated, but I learned that you could be what's called a penetration tester. So I begged, borrowed, and stole everything I could find about pen testing, every book, every resource that I could find. And I basically worked a night job for a year and a half where I just put myself through labs. Back then there wasn't as much, but put myself through labs and courses and CBTs and anything I could do. And eventually I got a job as a junior penetration tester at a firm around where I live. So a little bit of a non-standard, entryway, or maybe a standard one. I don't know, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, my story's not that interesting. That's actually really interesting. I came from a software development background, and as the intro said, it was 30 years of software development, the last almost 18 doing web development. And I kind of had a moment when WannaCry hit, and you're talking about 2 years ago. And that was a kind of an eye-opening moment for me where I said, there's real human impact here. And I looked at the fact that there were people being turned away for chemotherapy treatment, dialysis treatment over in the UK, and that was a really telling moment because I think most of us look at financial institutions, we're like, all right, well, the credit card gets hacked, we'll get a new one, and guess what? We're not responsible for that. But when it's your family, and I have my daughter in the audience, and if it was my daughter, what would I do if she couldn't get her own treatment because some miscreant decided to lock up systems? And that was a big deal for me. So I started looking at how I can get involved in cybersecurity. And I really didn't have a goal of getting into the profession of cybersecurity. My goal was, how do I contribute, whether as a hobbyist or just leveraging the experience I had as a software developer, to improve the state of cybersecurity. And as I got more involved and met more people, met people like Jason and Chloe, and of course a boatload of other people that are local to me, it became more apparent that there was a dramatic need for people with different perspectives. If you look at the makeup of the security world, a lot of folks do come from the network infrastructure world. But there's this whole other gamut out there, this whole other world of people who can contribute in some fashion. And I like to use the term non-traditional folks who come through a non-traditional path to contribute to the cybersecurity world. And that was kind of me. That's what I wanted to do. So after I went to DEF CON and after I went to Black Hat and got my indoctrination and freaked out, yes, I was one of those that went out and got a burner phone and a burner laptop because I was just freaked out by DEF CON. All right. And then slowly I realized, all right, I don't need that burner phone, okay? I can probably not worry about just turn off some services. But after the second DEF CON, I realized this is where I really want to be. I want to be part of this community. I want to learn more. I took a course in hacking with a company called Hacker House, led by Matthew Hickey, who goes by Hacker Fantastic, and went through the eLearn security penetration testing courses, and got an opportunity with Microsoft. And I feel very fortunate because after 2 years, I was able to land a really good position with a top company, being able to, and look, I'm here on stage and hopefully be able to share some of the experiences I had with you folks.
This is pretty cool. To WannaCry as the inspiration turning point in your guys' I guess, beginning of the hacking career.
It sounds very similar, right?
Yeah,
our paths are very similar.
I mean, like it is. It's your identification.
Clearly.
How many of you guys are actual students right now?
Awesome.
All right.
That's awesome, yeah.
How many?
I'm a student too, guys. Literally 2 years. I swear to you, I'm a student.
So we have a lot of students in here, and I'm assuming some of you guys are just newbies at hacking as well. And I'm curious, besides, web hacking 101 handbooks and whatnot, what are some other resources that you think are really good for all of the newbies out there?
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. So I consider myself the newer newbie. You're an older newbie, right? So like you said, you didn't have a lot of resources back then. So the good thing is that now there's so many new resources that are available to students that want to get involved in cybersecurity and also want to span the breadth of different areas of cybersecurity. So the first thing to do is kind of identify the things that really get you excited. There are different routes in cybersecurity, and you're going to get in there and you're going to say, oh my God, what is this? Because everybody thinks, oh, let me just go hack a system and that's it. No, you have obviously red team, blue team, purple team. You have digital forensics. You have incident response. You have obviously red teaming, pen testing, and all these different facets of cybersecurity. I'm not touching on everything yet. I mean, look at web application penetration testing, which has become like now the thing that everybody's talking about. And so there's so many different ways of getting involved, but I think the first thing that is important is to kind of identify what really gets you going. When I got into it, because I had a lot of experience in software development, there was an assumption by everybody that I was naturally going to go into application pen testing. And I think it's really interesting, I do, but for me, it was really important to have a much broader understanding of how security worked. There's so many facets to it that I didn't want to just get typecast because of my experiences in the past. I wanted to capitalize on this career change that I was making to go into something that I really wanted to do. So I'd say first identify that. And then once you've identified the area that really excites you, start aggregating resources around it. There are plenty of online courses you can take, and of course there's in-person courses like SANS and stuff. But let's say you wanted to do web application pen testing. Just look at BugCrowd University, and Jason's created like I'm going to call it the resource for doing that type of penetration testing. You have the methodology for it. I mean, literally, you do have the methodology. But if you're going to go into digital forensics, well, eLearn Security just released a very well-regarded course on incident response and digital forensics. So I think there's the key thing to do is find yourself a good set of courseware that gives you an understanding of what it takes to get involved in the particular area you want to go to, and then you have to practice. There's no way around that. Book learning is fine. I think you can understand topics and you can talk about certain topics, but actually getting your hands dirty and doing things like Hack the Box or Hack.me or Over the Wire, all those things are going to give you the practical experience that you're going to need to then take it to the next level of finding that initial opportunity. Because once you get into the initial opportunity, they're going to expect to have some level of understanding of how these tools work. And then from there, I mean, you can even consider things like bug bounties. And yeah, this is a bug crowd panel, so it makes sense to consider bug bounties because they do give you real-world penetration testing experience within a confined scope, and it gives you a shield of liability. That's the key thing. You don't want to go and practice hacking on live systems you don't own, because I think you're going to get into some serious trouble.
Yeah, you'll not be happy with that.
Yeah, but if you go into these labs like Hack the Box, or if you participate in bug bounties, at least you have some shield of liability from the things that you are doing. If you break something and you're within scope, you're not gonna get into trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a web specialist these days, right? So web hacking, even though my intro says I do a little bit of everything, not a master at anything, but there are a lot more resources these days, and a couple of the ones that I really think are doing a bang-up job for people who are new and who are students is the aggregation type project. So OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, has this project called the Broken Web Applications Directory, right? And so before we used to only have like WebGoat, and we had Damn Vulnerable Web App, and we had a couple, but now there's over 120 broken web apps that you can install on your own, either just Docker up, like in your own environment, and they're all self-guided, and there's a million guides out there too on how to solve the different web application challenges, right? My favorite personal one that I train my students on is BWAP, and the reason I like BWAP is because for someone just getting into this, it has, for every different classification of bug, let's say cross-site scripting, they have 15 different basically subcategories showing you how to do cross-site scripting in a GET request in the URL, or a POST request, or how to do it as a multi-part form, or how to do it when there's some type of weird filtering, right? And it really builds your iterative knowledge when you're going into these things. So that's one of the resources I start with. And just to kind of back up Ray's point is bug bounty wasn't around when I started, so I started on like WebGoat and stuff like that. But every time I make a resume for students when I'm doing anything, I include all of that on their resume, right? Like we sit together and we say, all right, you did Pentester Lab, you did all of the free Hack.me stuff, you did Over the Wire, you also participated and scored even duplicates on a Fortune 500 company's bug bounty, right? This is all relative. So when I'm hiring in AppSec, and I look at someone's resume and they've already done all that, like that's actually the part I skip to. I'm like, this person has put in significant amounts of time and passion into doing this, and obviously it shows, and that's the kind of person I want to hire who has that drive and already has like a pretty good exposure. The in-depth weeds and the use cases, edge cases, that can be taught, right? So bug bounty is like a new vehicle to kind of add to a student's repertoire to get into the industry, get a foot in, right? And I think the ultimate goal is to, a lot of people have this kind of question like, can you do bug bounties full time? And you can. I know people who do it full time, but they're hustlers. They're hustling really hard to bring in the same kind of paycheck. So I think the goal is, do bug bounty to get into the industry, get a job, still do bug bounty on the side as long as your employer is cool with it. Don't go against like any non-disclosure or non-competes or anything like that. And that's the kind of world we live in today. Is like that's your route. One of the good routes into security. Yeah. Yeah,
and I would say that also if you're a hiring manager, consider exactly what Jason said. You have a lot of people that want to get into this industry, and it's really challenging. It's the old conundrum of I want to get experience, but I can't get a job because I don't have experience, and it's really hard. So, I'm a big advocate of non-traditional people coming into the industry to fill the gap. There is a gap of something like 3 million security jobs that need to be filled, and if you're solely looking for experienced security people, that's going to be a challenge for you. Everybody that's a really good security person is probably employed right now. And so in order to fill these roles, fill these gaps, we have to look outside of the box. And so things like what you were saying, getting experience through bug bounty programs or these apps that are going out there can help you kind of measure up whether a person can do the actual job. So please consider that. consider the fact that there's a diverse set of people out there that want to help. And if you don't kind of open your eyes, if you don't expand your talent pool, it's going to be kind of hard not only to fill the gaps that we have, but you're going to be missing out on perspectives from people who are just not like you. All right, so please think about that, whether it's gender, whether it's age, whether it's hair color. Think about how you're going to think about the talent pool and how these different perspectives will help solve some of the complex issues we have.
I like both your guys' points. I mean, most of my friends, they started doing bug bountying when they were like in college, so then they can actually learn things, and they knew that getting into like being a pen tester could take like a year or two to get into. So by doing bug bountying, it's showing evidence already that like they're capable of doing that. And a lot of our ambassadors, like yourself, at BugCraft, actually, that's what they did, and that's how they got their pen testing job, was through bug bountying. But they also like to keep going at their skills, so even if they are a pen tester, they still continue doing these bug bounties so then they can up their skills, learn new things at the same time, and it's absolutely fantastic. And speaking about like bug bounty and all that, like, what are some of your favorite tools to use, like besides Burp Suite? Because, I mean, come on, let's all say we love Burp Suite here.
You want to go first? Okay, all right. So I actually made a list for you guys of like the new stuff. So I'll pull it off my phone. So I break down kind of like, I'm kind of a tool junkie. I wouldn't call myself a script kiddie, but I tend to automate where I can, right? So I'm a web hunter. I focus on projects that are large scope, meaning projects that are bug bounties that say like, you can hack anything that is this company, like NASA. They don't have bug bounty, don't hack them. But I'm just using them for example, right, NASA.
I did not say that, right?
Yeah, no.
Right there. All right.
And so I spend a lot of time on recon, right? I want to find sites that are not the main site, because they're less often secured really well, right? They haven't had security audits. They haven't had a ton of pen testers already beat up on them. So I want to go after those targets in my priority first. So bug bounty is a game, basically. You're competing against other researchers all the time, and so I have to find the best return for my time. So lately, since this is kind of like a tools and techniques section, in my recon, one of the important things is finding subdomains. NASA, is it .gov, I think? Or, yeah, NASA.gov, right, is a domain, right? But NASA invariably has multitudes of subdomains like launch.nasa.com or admin.nasa.com or even help or marketing or whatever, right? And so to find these other sites, completely different applications, there are many sources out on the internet, right? So I used the example the other day of VirusTotal, right? VirusTotal normally is something that you use where you submit a binary to check for malware, right? But what VirusTotal does is it parses that binary and pulls out all of its URLs and all of its domains and subdomains. In order for me to get a good feeling for what NASA has, I need to go out to all these sources, I call them, like VirusTotal, right? And I need to ask VirusTotal, what subdomains have you seen for NASA just in your database? So for sources on the internet, it turns out there's probably about 60 to 65 different sources on the internet. And this is called OSINT or Recon or whatever you want to call it. But there's 65 different sources. So between two tools, you can pretty much get a mapping of every source on the internet. One is called AMAS, which I use extensively in my testing. And the other one is called Subfinder. And between these two tools, they go out to every API and every service and scrape down every subdomain that they've ever seen for a target. Running something on like NASA or a big top-level domain, I'll get back, not only nasa.gov, but now I'll get back, 150 sites, or 500 sites. I think the largest pullback I've ever gone after my whole recon process was 500 unique applications, which invariably at that point, as a bounty hunter, I probably can't lose. That's a lot of AppSec space, right? That's a lot of applications. There's a lot of stuff there. So that has to be in scope of your project, and those are the projects I'm interested in. So OSINT and Recon, those are the tools I use, AMAS and Subfinder. You said not to mention Burp, but really like a lot of vulnerabilities in web testing are instrumented through Burp. So Burp Suite is a core competency. You have to have it. Or an interception proxy. You could use Zap instead. I think Fiddler kind of less used, but like some interception proxy, something that sits between your browser and the web server that allows you to look at traffic and modify it. That's the crux of almost all web testing. So, but a lot of times these days, a lot of findings are based upon apps that are heavily instrumenting JavaScript. And not all of these interception proxies are really good at parsing JavaScript and figuring out what the paths and URLs are that you need to visit. And so there was this tool called Link Finder, which basically you could feed a whole bunch of URLs, JavaScript files, and it would basically unpack them, unobfuscate them, because JavaScript just comes pretty ugly nowadays in all different forms. And it would give you
it on purpose just to give you a headache.
Yeah, and so I used to use Link Finder to uncover all of these. And there's been several tools released really recently. This is why I love the Bounty space, is because it's so iterative. The Bounty space has pushed forward security testing tooling like crazy. This idea of scraping subdomains that I just talked about, before that, the only resource you had to do subdomain enumeration was brute forcing. And now we have like this way better method to use. So Bounty hunters made those tools. So that's what I really enjoy about the scene. But yeah, with JavaScript, there's this tool called Link Finder. You can parse all of it. It'll give you all the endpoints. It'll also give you a chance to inspect those JavaScript files, unpacked and unencrypted, and look for private API keys that are stored in JavaScript files, which I find a lot, actually. It's kind of a silly vuln, but people just embed stuff, like crazy. So credentials, private API keys, paths that are for admins only. So those are some of the in-depth stuff. So Burp will consume all of that, and I can pull it back into Burp and then test those sites. And then for code injection, Burp does a really good job if you have the pro version. I think Burp for cross-site scripting, SQL injection, other code injection vulnerabilities, it does a pretty good job of identification, but it doesn't do exploitation all the time, right? So there's some pretty staple tools that you have to get familiar with when you're a web tester. SQL map. Comics is the command injection relation to SQL map. For newer vulnerabilities like server-side template injections, there's TPL map, and there's a whole bunch of these map tools now, but they're all designed to help you with exploitation use cases for these single-shot vulnerabilities. So those are some of the ones that I've been using lately.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you this massive long list. No, but I think if there's two things that really stand out for me in terms of tools. Number one is going to be there are actually two servers. One is the Discord server for NetSec Focus, which is one of the best online forums out there. As somebody who is new to the industry and has to, is still in this massive learning stage, being able to go and ask people, really detailed questions and get very comprehensive answers has been invaluable. And the same with the Hack Miami Slack channel, which everybody there is great. They've been very embracing. They're going to have their conference now, next month, I think it is? Mm-hmm. No, we're not in April yet, in May. So, I think those two servers have been invaluable as tools for me to learn, but also in some of the questions I've had when I've used different tools. I think if there was two tools that I can kind of outline, obviously Burp Suite, you can't get away from it. I know you said no, but you can't.
It was a tricky question.
I know, but it's such an invaluable tool, and I know Sunny Ware was here giving a workshop, and I heard there was a fantastic workshop. But other than that, I love SQL Map. I mean, I can't remember every SQL union syntax. I'm lazy in that sense. You said you like to automate things. I call that being lazy, just like me, and that's actually perfectly fine. Why would I have to remember all these things? So if I can use SQL Map to kind of do some of that recon and tell me, hey, is this actually vulnerable, and then go forward from there, that's a huge help. So there's obviously a lot of tools out there. It's just there's so many tools. I mean, I love Sublister, and now everybody's raving about GoBuster because GoBuster was actually faster in subdomain enumeration. So there's so many tools out there that are fantastic. If you ever want to see an awesome list, go to GitHub, and I think it's the awesome list of penetration testing tools or something along those lines.
Yeah, there's one for pen testing, and there's an awesome list for bug bounty as well.
Seriously, go to GitHub and just do a search, or just do a Google search, and you're going to find a list. The key thing, though, is that when you find this list of things, just know that you don't need to know everything on it. It can be overwhelming, and so look through the things that really cater to where you want to focus your information security direction in, and then start looking at which tools actually are going to solve the problem. And go step by step. They don't feel like you have to be an expert in all of them.
I like that.
Except Burp Suite.
Yeah, I like that comment. A lot of people, they always have this idea that to be a good hacker or whatnot, you need to know how to code. This is not true. You can actually hack very well without learning any coding whatsoever.
Yeah, one of the guys on our platform and the other platforms as well, his name is Mark Litchfield, and he'll be the first to tell you he's reached the $1 million mark, which is a large mark on bug bounty platforms, and he doesn't know how to code. I don't know how to code either. I can write Python scripts and Bash scripts, but that's about it. If you sat me, I always tell people, if you sat me on an enterprise development team, I would be lost, right? But I know enough about applications to be dangerous, so yeah.
I love that. So a lot of times people always ask, like, what's the best tip that you have when starting in bug bounty or being in bug bounty? And usually I hear from most people, which is like, just don't give up. They'll be, even the top, like, bug bounters, like, for them, they will not find something for weeks sometimes. And these are our top performers. And his always, like, their advice usually is basically don't give up. Just keep going and going. It takes time and dedication and passion, and just keep being curious. Besides that, what is your short tip on just trying to do well in bug bountying?
Short tip. So it's not short, but that's okay. So
Haddix.
I approach each and every application I land on as a set of inputs and a set of data, right? I look at an application and I say, where is it taking in data, right? Those are usually called dynamic places in the application from me, and in every single one of those parameters or fields or whatever, I ask myself, a couple questions. I say, is this data eventually going to come back to me displayed somewhere? In which case, I'm going to try certain types of vulnerabilities like cross-site scripting and other things like that. Or is this data going to be operated on by a database, right? Or some kind of data store, right? In which case, I'll try other vulnerabilities. I ask myself that for major functions in the application. And then I also try to think a little bit outside of the box, right? I try to think about what is important to this application that's not standard, right? So when I do my class, I do twitch.tv. And you know what twitch.tv is? Streaming service, right? For video gamers and really everybody now. There's certain data that a lot of people forget about that needs to be protected by a platform like Twitch TV, right? It's not just your email address and your password that's stored in that database. It's also a private messaging system, your real address information for where you're coming from streaming, which is protecting your anonymity to some point. Your integrations with other platforms. There's a whole bunch of private data that just being a user. So every application I go into, I look at, all right, what are the non-standard things that they want to protect, and are they doing a good job of protecting those things? And I will usually try to find vulnerabilities based around getting those things for other people I shouldn't have access to. So.
If I had to, sorry. I think there was two things that I can say right off the top of my head. It's don't go down the rabbit hole. In many cases, you'll think, oh, this is vulnerable for sure, and then you just start digging and digging and digging and digging and digging, and before you know it, you've just lost a ton of time on something that really you should probably step away from and then maybe revisit later on. Don't feel like everything that you think might be a vulnerability is a vulnerability. So again, don't go down that rabbit hole, because you will get lost, and then you're going to be pretty bitter later on. The other thing is be conscious of the scope. It's really important when you're doing bug bounty that you stay within scope. You may find something in a totally different area that's out of scope of the actual bug bounty, and you're thinking, man, I just scored a major win here, and I'm going to get paid. And then guess what? All of a sudden you submit it, and it's just not. It wasn't what they were asking for. And I think it's important that you understand that whether you're doing a bug bounty or a pen test, you're going to have a scope of work, and you have to stay within those guidelines. That's the expectation of the client that you're working for. And whether you're doing a penetration test for an actual client or you're doing a bug bounty, the bug bounty company and BugCrowd basically are your clients. They're going to give you a defined scope of work to kind of participate in, and that's what you want to do. You just got to be cognizant of that.
I like all these tips, and I'm glad you brought up like the in-scope, out-scope kind of situation. Anyone ever heard of Disclose.io in the audience? You should check it out. It's a lot about safe harbor. It's two different parts. There's one that is the legal language of vulnerability disclosure. And then the second part is actually a list for hackers to know what is in scope, what's out of scope, what companies are safe, what is the rewards like, what's the contact information. And this was all done by the community, which is absolutely fantastic. I think it's a great tool, especially when you're starting in it?
Yeah, disclose.io is kind of like one of those projects that's slept on a little bit, I think, right now. But you know, like when you disclose vulnerabilities, you put yourself at risk if you're not a pen tester, right? And so these are companies that have explicitly basically said the CFFA rules don't apply to you, our EULA doesn't apply to you if you're doing good faith security research. And those companies are the ones you want to work with the most, really, is people who really have the researcher and hacker as the first priority and guarantee to you that they will not litigate against you ever, right? Nobody wants to go to jail. You know, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about the laws in the US and abroad about security research, right? Even through a bug bounty. You know, like there is some implied consent, right, in bug bounty, but there are no laws that says bug bounty supersedes the law, right? So disclose.io really gives you a list and a map of all those companies that have explicitly said you can go for it, and we'll support hackers and submit vulnerabilities to submit vulnerabilities.
And that's fantastic because I don't know about you guys, but like if I'm gonna go hacking on something, I want to know that I'm safe and I won't have insomnia. And speaking of, you know, mental health of insomnia, I'm someone who deals with anxiety, also the imposter syndrome, because I'm like, you know, a woman in InfoSec. We're like this amount in InfoSec. I'm curious, how do you guys deal with mental health in this field?
I'll tackle that. So, you know, the one thing as being new, I have a fire hose. I'm constantly drinking from the fire hose. I look at a lot of folks like you, Jason, Marcus Carey's out there, obviously, and I look at you folks as the people that are helping me define where I need to be. And even though I know that in your eyes you're probably all constantly learning, but I feel like I need to get up to that level, and I need to push myself. And it's a hard thing that anybody that's getting into information security has to tackle, and you have to kind of put the brakes on it. And thankfully, I have that awareness where I know that sometimes I'm pushing myself a little bit too hard, and I need to kind of slow it down, because burnout's a real thing. And if you burn out, it doesn't matter how good you can become. You're not going anywhere. You're kind of gonna be stuck. So being able to know when to kind of push the brake a little bit and walk away, kind of reconnect with the real world, reconnect with family, do things that are outside of that, and take your time to kind of breathe a little bit is a big thing. And I think it's going to be important as you're developing your skills to kind of do that and be aware and just be cognizant of your own body. Your body will tell you when you're tired. And listen, that's not the time to say, I can stay up till another 3 o'clock night and just be wrecked the next day. You have to give yourself logical breaks. You have to pace yourself as you're going through the learning process, because there is a lot of information to consume. So I think that's really important to have that pace, that just take care of yourself and set your expectations accordingly. One of the things I like to do is I like to set blocks of time during the day that I am allocating for different things. Some of it may be learning. Some of it may be practicing. Some of it may just be doing other things around the house. But I try to be very cognizant about my schedule and how much time I'm actually allocating to learning. I'm not 20 years old anymore where I can, I have my kids. I can't be up till 3, 4, 5 in the morning and then get up at 7 and feel all cheery and hey, I think, my wife has seen me during those times, and yeah, it wasn't a pretty picture. So I recommend to all of you, even the young ones that you're at that stage where you can stay up till 3, 4 and feel good the next day, pace yourself, because you will feel it later on.
Yeah, I think like mental health is a super big topic right now among security people. I think a lot of people treat this profession as a hobby and a passion, which makes it really hard to disconnect from, especially myself. So I will get like that. I will hack until 3 in the morning till it's probably uncomfortable. I'm not getting much return off of it anyway at that point, unless I was really chasing something that I need to close out. But I would say find like your person. I know that sounds weird, right? But like a mentor, a friend, someone you're going through learning with, finding one person that you really identify with, they'll keep you grounded. I have a buddy named Daniel Meisler. He's one of my best friends, and he's the guy I'll go to when I'm stressed out. We have no filter really with each other, so we can talk about anything. And so finding a partner to go through, or a community to support you while you're going through learning is really important. I think that's this is one of the ways I stay sane, as well as I take breaks too. I have family, I have 3 kids, a wife, and they're amazing. And if I can disconnect a little bit, in fact, there was a big Twitter thread going about this recently, and it's like, you'll often find the problem. Even Tavis from Google, who submits O day all day every day, he finds his stuff when he gets out of the shower, right? Like, and that's after having rested, right? You gotta really like understand that your brain works a little bit better with some sleep and not hopped up on caffeine and in the middle of the night, blaring whatever music you're blaring. So yeah, I take breaks with my family. I definitely keep grounded with my friends. I have video games, so video games are a second addiction of mine, so I will play a lot of video games to completely disconnect from InfoSec for a little while and then come back later. So.
Yeah, I really like when you said that you have a confidant that you can go to and have those conversations. I think that's important. The one thing I've realized is that the security community it's comprised of a lot of introverted people, and that's perfectly fine. But the hard part for people who are introverted, and believe it or not, even though I'm here, I grew up an introvert, and I'm still sometimes like, okay, but my job, it kind of pushes me to go ahead, and I like to use the term shake hands and kiss babies. And so it can be challenging in that sense. But I would say that if you have a hard time communicating, find that one person. You don't have to have a tremendous group of friends, but find that one person that you can trust and have that outlet that you can share some of the concerns you have, and that way you can. How do we say it in Spanish? In Spanish is desahogar. Christina, how do you say desahogar? Oh, God, okay. So she just repeated the same exact thing. Thanks. You can have a release. There you go. You can have a release that will help you get through some of the more challenging times in your life.
I like how you guys bring up mentorship and all that. Honestly, for me, about a year ago, well, not even a year ago, I almost left the field because I felt alone. I didn't have a support network. I didn't have mentors, and being someone who's underrepresented as a woman, I found so many challenging situations where I was facing discrimination on a daily basis. And it was only in a moment where I connected with a few other women, and really, really amazing men too, who were just like, I got your back, and you're not alone, was the moment everything changed, and I didn't want to leave the field anymore. So anyone in this audience, I always do this thing, and I always leave this question open. If you ever feel alone, don't be alone. If you don't have someone to reach out, or you're looking for a mentor, and I have multiple mentors, by the way, but if you need anyone and you feel alone, don't feel alone. This is a very close InfoSec community. They have each other's backs. You just need to find that support network. And if you don't know where to do or where to look that, come to me afterwards or DM me on Twitter. It's Chloe Messdaghi. I know that's really long. You can find it online, though. But honestly, I will find you a mentor. I will find you the support groups you need, because I don't want a single person in this room leaving InfoSec or having to go with what I had to experience, because that is so not cool in 2019, you guys. We're supposed to be much more diverse and inclusion as much as possible. I know we have not that much time. We have 5 minutes. However, if there is anyone who has a question, I would love to open it up for some Q&A.
Guess I'll ask a question.
Hey,
so
Alex.
I have the mic. All right. So this question is kind of for you, Ray. Something I kind of love and hate about the security industry is how small but also immature it is. Recently, I've actually started doing developer work for my company, and when working with developers, I realized how much more mature I feel like, at least I feel that the developing industry is a bit more mature than we are. Can
you define what you mean by mature?
Well,
are you meaning like the way people interact, or
the way we share
technology?
information? For example, when I was in college, I was doing a digital forensics course. I could not Google how to get a verification hash out of Ncase to save my life. Whereas there are Stack Overflow threads for everything in the developing community. There's information is shared, I feel like, a lot easier. So I guess my question is when we talk about the lack of talent in the industry, is the real failure the failure of education? And are we setting the bar too high? Are we saying that we need to breathe security to be in the industry? Is it, I guess this is a kind of a loaded question, but I mean, what are your impressions on the maturity of the industry in general? And do you think there's areas of improvement in terms of like just knowledge sharing? It's a very loaded question.
No, that's a great question. And so what I've gathered is that there is an air of having, you almost need to prove yourself in order to be accepted into the community in many circles. And I don't want to, and I'm not going to generalize broadly because I've experienced many pockets where people are very accepting, very open, and very willing to, I'm going to call it take a chance on somebody brand new. I'm an example of that. Not only did BugCrowd invite me to become an ambassador, but I managed to find an opportunity at Microsoft. So I think we do have this, there is that sense that people will only want to hire you if you already have experience. And it goes back to what I was saying. How can you get hired if you don't have experience? Nobody's willing to give you that shot. And that feels dated. The thing that the web developer community has is that there's been so many resources online that you can become a very proficient web developer just by taking a Udemy course or a boot camp or something like that and immediately be fairly effective. I'm not saying that you're going to go and scaffold up a whole React app, using the React JavaScript framework, but if you can get part of the way there and you have an understanding of the basics of web technology, whether it's HTML, CSS, JavaScript, other foundational technologies, you have the opportunity to find something that's really, really good, a really good opportunity. In the security world, I feel like it is a bit more challenging, but maybe that's also attributed to the fact that security is such a broad area. Security is not just these three technologies. Security spans so much. And if you think about, like, I know you're very big into digital forensics. Think about how much digital forensics entails. Think about incident response. So the team that I'm on, for example, we have an IR team. And I see the engagements they go on, and it's crazy. So there's a certain level of experience that you do need to have depending on the role you're in, and that's also acts as a bit of a barrier. But depending on the approach that you take, something like eLearn Security or Hacker House or SANS courses can give you the foundational understanding to get up to speed. The other thing is that a lot of companies, they are so set on certifications. I mean, if you don't have a CEH or a CISSP, you're not even getting a conversation. And I think that's wrong. I think you should be able to have at least a conversation to see if this person is somebody you want to make an investment in. And I find that a lot of people don't want to make that investment. They just want to hire somebody and go. And if you can do that, that's great. But I also think there's people that you're missing out on that could really make a substantial contribution to your companies.
Great, Ray. Thank you. We have time for one more question, and then we are done. We're actually over time, but I think we could do one more, right? Okay, cool. Thank you.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Go ahead, Marcus.
All right, so I think it's unfair to talk about proprietary software like Encase, because not too many people have access to Encase. Related to the other question, Encase is very expensive, nobody has it. I think the open source hacker community is pretty open, and I'm a developer too, so I think the developer community is just as crappy as the hacker community is. Yeah. Second thing, somebody asked me the question earlier, and I want to know, BugCrowd is probably the best people to handle this. Like, we're on the internet, we find something wrong, we go to disclose.io, the company, do not go to this company, they will arrest you, whatever. What is somebody supposed to do after that?
So this one hits kind of close to home because I've had those situations before. And it's a judgment call you have to weigh. If I'm just being super honest with it, it's a judgment call and a risk-reward ratio that you have to kind of discover, right? Basically, I've had that situation many times, whether it's installed software or it's a web application that has a bug. They don't have a bug bounty. They don't have a security ad inbox. They don't have anything. And so really, I have to kind of judge by my guess of the brand if it's going to be worth it to disclose the vulnerability. And then I have to decide whether I'm going to disclose it publicly or privately. Now, I've done both, right? Like, I think we grew up in the age of putting it on full disclosure emailing list, right? That was how we used to disclose vulns, either anonymously or unanonymously for cred. And I think that's still super dangerous. We don't have a good like anonymous way to whistle blow on apps, right? Like we don't. It doesn't exist. So when I run across those sites, I was working for a gaming, or I was playing a video game, went out and bought some gaming gear. I like to tell this story because it has a happy ending, but I went out and bought some gaming gear, found out that their order confirmation page where you track your shipment was subject to an IDOR, where like the shipment number was a 6-digit numeric ID, and if I iterate it up or down, I get somebody else's shipment information, which included their credit card number and their address and their email and their name. And so I had bought headphones, and I was a consumer of this product, and so they had no bug bounty, no nothing, right? And so I had to make a choice there, and I put myself out on a limb. I had to spam LinkedIn, basically. I had to find developers inside that organization who looked like they had security experience. I had to overcompensate for my report to him. I basically said, I've been working in the industry 10 years. I'm a consumer of your product. I wrote like an essay to this guy. I said, I'm legit. I'm not trying to extort you. I just want to let you know that this is bad. And it worked out for me. They were pretty cool. They ended up actually giving me like a backpack and an extra head of headphones, which is cool for me. But you know, a lot of those stories don't go super well, right? And to protect yourself as a hacker, like there's things like you can do where you can try to work with EFF to do something. You can go through a journalist, but those just never seem to work out super well. I guess there's not a real answer to your question. There's no intermediary that'll work in that app in that way, right? Luckily, I would say about 60% of the industry has at least now a security at email box, which implies that they're willing to work with you to submit vulnerabilities. And then the 40% is rapidly coming towards at least having some place you can disclose a security vulnerability and some language on their website that says we are willing to accept security vulnerabilities from people. So there's a lot of work to be done. I hope that answers your question.
I just want to say we have run out of time. I just want to say a big shout out to thanking you all for being here. And if you want to ask questions, we'll probably be right over here or outside. And a big thank you to B-Sides Orlando for accepting this panel. And it was awesome to be with you guys, so thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much
for inviting me.